Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, Microsoft and Adobe have a boatload of emergency patches. Then the Replicant project finds a backdoor built into many popular Android devices. Then we'll tell you about the malware that weaponizes your webcam that's just an attachment away. Then it's a great big batch of your questions, our answers, and much, much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is episode 163 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly systems network and administration podcast. We stream this episode live on May 22nd, 2014. This episode is brought to you by our three fine sponsors, Ting, DigitalOcean, and iX Systems. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. But our live stream is powered by the incredible Scale Engine over at scaleengine.com. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week for 163 weeks is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Mr. Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan.
Hey, Chris, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Hey, Alan, how you feeling? Just got back from the trip.
I'm rested up. It took a couple days to get rested back up, but I'm back.
Well, how was it?
It was amazing. It was so crazy.
Yeah.
I don't think I got to bed before 4 a.m. any single day at the conference.
Wow.
From like the Tuesday before it started through the last day. And I was up by 8 a.m. the first 3 days and 7:45 a.m. the next 2 days.
Now, you didn't have any major time zone issues.
No, there was
trip.
no time zone change, which helped a lot.
Yeah.
And I got there on the Monday and got to sleep in Tuesday morning. But then Tuesday night, we had the goat boff, which I talked a little bit about before. But basically, one of the presenters was timing his presentation and made a snarky comment on Twitter about he just needed to sacrifice a goat so the demo would work. And after that went back and forth with a bunch of people that have ended up me being asked to bring a goat because I wouldn't have to bring it through customs.
Oh, so you're the one that brought that goat that I've seen in all the pictures?
So I went on Amazon and bought a stuffed goat, like a little plush goat, and took it with me. And so on the Tuesday night, everybody that was there for the developer summit met up at the bar to hang out or whatever, and lots of people got their picture taken with the goat.
Alan, that's super funny. In fact, I'm showing a couple of pictures of it right now.
Well, then it went beyond that.
I
the
saw
original
you.
plan was to,
I think I saw you putting on a head of somebody too. Like I saw.
Right. One sec. I'm gonna add, you have the show notes up because I didn't add that album. There's a whole album of just people getting their picture taken with the goat.
Do you want to toss it in there? I can show it on the screen.
Yeah, I'm getting it right now.
Okay.
I just have to grab the link.
I was watching from afar. You guys were really all over the Twitter and the Facebook and the G+. It was I mean, I was really impressed. It was like,
there you go.
Looked like a party. Okay.
So everybody got their picture taken with the goat. And the original plan was actually to auction off the goat at the charity auction they have at the end of the conference every year. But after it became so popular, it seemed like a shame to let just one person take it home.
Right.
And you know, if it was just like a one-time thing, it would be less meaningful. So what we actually decided to do is send it to the next conference. So
the goat lives on.
Yeah, so the goat is actually on its way to EuroBSDCon this summer. Where it will then be passed on to someone else and go to Asia BSDCon in Tokyo, and then I will pick it up there and bring it back for BSDCan.
Wow, Alan, you know, I recognize a lot of these faces from BSD now. That's funny.
Yes, we have quite a few of the people we've interviewed or been on, got their picture taken. I hunted them down.
Yeah, you get to meet them. There's some great pictures of this goat. This is really funny.
Watch out for the one with Bob Beck trying to do goatsy to the goat.
I think I saw that. Yeah, it was too late. I saw everything.
So anyway, when I gave it to Benedict, everybody decided that, so instead of auctioning off the goat, what we did was he auctioned off the naming rights for the goat. But Dan was smart and predicted that someone would suggest a really bad name.
Oh, there's always that possibility.
Yeah. So what we did was we decided to take the top 3 that people bid on and then have a vote of everybody. And luckily the vote won, and so he became named Groff, the BSD goat, instead of Goatsy.
Oh, Groff, that's way better than Goatsy.
Exactly. The other suggestion was Butty, as in headbutting because that's what goats do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Groff was much better.
Well, and I believe
It's the name of a Unix tool, and it sounds like Billy Goat Gruff, and it sounds like a goat's name.
I don't know any other BSD goat that has a Twitter account either. At Groff the BSD goat.
Yeah, and he's also got a Google Plus by the same name. And both have pictures. If you're looking at it, you can see like there's Groff having a nap after taking the BSD exam, Groff having a shower, Groff having his coffee,
Groff listening to a podcast, or Frank Sinatra, as the quote says. Yeah.
Groff getting on the airplane and going back to Germany.
Aw, you BSD guys kind of know how to party, don't you?
Yeah. And we had such a great time.
Yeah, that's really funny.
It was all kinds of good stuff. And keep watching. I imagine there'll be more stuff coming out of that Twitter account.
Yes.
I think Groff is going to go to the university for a day at some point, too.
Well, it sounds like he's going to get passed around to some other conventions.
Yes.
Might actually become a feed to watch just to see what's going on.
And the funny part was like Jean-Marc Gurney, who's one of the security researcher guys at FreeBSD, he's commented, Groff has had a Twitter account for 1 day, and he already has more followers than I do, and I've had an account for a year.
Yeah, he's got 161 followers right now.
Yeah.
The stuffed goat.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
And that doesn't count all the people that are only on G+.
Right. That's fun, though. We should do something like that for the Linux conferences. Not a goat, though, because you guys got the goat now. We'll have to do something else. Maybe a penguin. I don't know.
You guys can't steal our ideas. Come on.
All right, fine. I'll just stick with the text.
It's BSD license. You're allowed to do it.
But I will say, if that we have not only, I think in the feedback segment, are we going to cover some stuff from the conference, but also you guys covered it in this week's BSD Now, which is already out and published on the Jupiter Broadcasting website. It was episode 38, A Bug's Life, which is out right now if you guys want to watch that. And Alan and Chris talk a bit about it. Especially
if you're into what the interview is about, running a users group. So even if you're not into a BSD users group and just want to hear,
that community.
It's actually, we have two people. We have Brian Callahan who's one of the guys that runs New York City BSD Con, New York City BSD users group, or NiceBug. They've been running for over 10 years, and so they're a very strong community. And then Aaron Bieber runs the Colorado BSD Unix group, so Cobug, and that one's brand new. So you get kind of both perspectives of what it's like to just be starting one versus what it's like to be running one that's already been going for 10 years.
Yeah, boy, that's good. That is great. That's really beneficial.
Yeah, and so it's not really BSD specific at all.
Yeah.
So it's a very good interview.
Well, while you were out...
Plus, we had like the half-hour recap of BSD Can, most of which only covered what happened the first 2 hours of the pre-conference event.
That's all right. Just leaves you more stuff for the next episode.
Yeah.
Well, while you were out conferencing, Microsoft and Adobe were really busy patching, weren't they?
Yeah.
All right. So are we going to start with this Microsoft and this? Is it just an IE only, or is it like an Adobe and IE thing? What's going on?
There's a whole bunch of different patches.
Oh, goody.
So Microsoft did their biggest patch Tuesday of the year with 8 bulletins, 2 of them critical, addressing in total 13 issues in Internet Explorer, SharePoint Server, Windows, Office, and the .NET framework. The first critical issue is MS-14-029, which no one had heard about up till this point. This is the first time it's been disclosed. Researchers with the Google security team have already spotted this being used in the wild, CE 2014-1815. So it's definitely should be number one on people's patch agenda, getting that done.
Okay.
Interesting, they pointed out that that's not a cumulative update, so it may depend on other updates being installed first. So that's kind of breaking stride with the way Apple or Microsoft normally does it. So it's kind of suggests that one might have been rushed because it was being exploited in the wild.
Right.
The batch of updates also includes the MS-1421, which addresses that previously disclosed bug that affected every version of IE between 6 and 11 that we talked about a couple of weeks ago on the show. I remember there was only a hot fix for it. There wasn't a proper patch. The proper patch is now out and available.
But I see no patch for XP.
For that one, I don't know.
Well, no, I just think it's interesting. Remember, a couple of weeks ago, we covered a story where they elected to continue to release an IE fix for XP.
I think this is the same one. This is the same one.
I don't see the download link for XP on here.
Right. That might have been just they might have only done the hotfix one for XP. I'm not sure.
Okay, gotcha.
But you can. We had the link to the threat post article where they cover more detail than I had time to get into.
All right.
So I don't have any XP machines left. It's not my problem.
Oh, okay. It's actually, you're right. It says right here, for XP, the out-of-band emergency patch will only be available via automatic update on XP.
Okay.
So not available via download. That explains the discrepancy.
That's weird, but okay.
Yeah.
One thing to note is that missing from this patch Tuesday were all the vulnerabilities found in March's Pwn to Own event, which included 3 IE vulnerabilities that completely bypassed the sandbox and could compromise the underlying system. So we don't expect those until June now, which is kind of too bad. If they found out about them in March, they couldn't get them fixed a little quicker, right? Also, in a blog entry, it says yesterday, but I guess relative to when that article came out like 2 weeks ago, the company pointed out that it's extending the deadline for customers to update to 8.1 from then today to June 10th. So you have until June 10th to get your Windows 8 updates installed. But after that, there will be no more security updates for previous version of Windows 8.
Wow, that was quick.
Or Windows 8.1. I think. Right. Is it just? I'm very unclear on this.
Yeah.
But I'm under the impression that Windows 8 is still fine, but it's 8.1 without the service pack that's being dropped.
Correct. 8.1 without a certain set of updates.
Yeah.
So if you have an
8.0 is still fine.
Yes. I know, and I'm very confused on it too, because I actually have one Windows 8 machine, and it's an 8.0 machine, and I don't use it very often. Mm-hmm. In fact, I never use it. But when I do need to just get something done on Windows, I have been worried about this, so I did a little digging, and as far as I can tell, 8.0 is going to continue to get updates for years.
Right. That's about normal. Actually, at BSDCam, we kind of talked about looking at changing the way FreeBSD does its support model.
Oh, yeah?
And looking at how Microsoft, Apple, Debian, Fedora, Red Hat, etc. do it.
Yeah.
And usually when they do a new point release, they drop support for the old one pretty quickly. Which is not how FreeBSD had worked previously. Like right now, we have a really weird thing where FreeBSD 9.1 is considered an extended support release, so it's good for 2 years after its release. And FreeBSD 9.2, which came out about 8 months later, is a standard release, so it's only good for 1 year after. So 9.2 will actually expire and be unsupported before 9.1.
That is a little confusing.
Yeah. So the way we're looking at changing it in FreeBSD is 9.x would be supported for 5 years from the first release, and then we'd only ever support the newest release on the branch, which would solve. You'd have 3 months to upgrade. So like when 9.3 comes out, it doesn't apply to the 9.x series because we're not going back that far. But the general idea would be when 9.3 comes out, 9.2 would be good for 3 months, and then you would have to upgrade. And that will save a lot of trouble. And I understand why other operating systems do it this way. And that's why FreeBSD is changing, or proposing to change to do it that way.
Right.
Anyway, on to the second half of the news.
Yeah.
Adobe had a bunch of patches as well. They released 2 updates that fixed critical issues in Adobe Reader and Adobe Acrobat, 11.0.06. When you string a bunch of these vulnerabilities together in a certain way, you can cause a crash or potentially allow the attacker to take control of the system. And along with that was a surprise Flash update.
Surprise Flash update?
13.0.206 and all previous versions are vulnerable on Windows, Mac, and Linux. The issue had previously not been clear about what... So Adobe still hasn't actually released the details on what the problem was, just crediting Keen Team and some other researchers for finding it, and said it could result in arbitrary code execution and ultimately let the attacker take control of an affected system. And so they have a patch for that, but they're not being specific about what the problem was, probably so that people have time to patch before the details come out. Adobe also released a security hotfix for Adobe Illustrator CS6 because there could be a Stack Overflow vulnerability that could lead to remote code execution when you open certain files.
Here, open up this attachment for me. Don't worry, it's an Illustrator file. You got nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Boom. Yeah. There was a big story ran on the national news, and they just kept reiterating in that story, do not open attachments. Do not open attachments. And I think it's a good point to drive home.
Yep.
Attachment is dead, my friend. All right, very good. Anything else on that story, Alan? It's a lot of patches for folks to go out and do.
Not especially.
Okay. All right, well then, speaking of conferences, why don't we stop and thank one of our favorite conference attenders, and that's iX Systems. Head over to ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. That'll let them know that you appreciate them supporting the show, and it's a great landing spot for you to check out iX Systems and all the awesome systems they have powered by Intel Xeon processors. And we always tell you about iX Systems on the TechSNAP program, and one of the things we often say is how involved they are with the community. And if you just want to get a sense of that, head over to iX Systems G Plus page. One of the ways I was staying up on Alan's shenanigans while he was at the conference was by watching the iX feeds. You know, I saw some good pictures of you in there.
And because of the ridiculously with air travel that week, because of weather on the East Coast and then the fire at the Chicago airport.
Oh, yeah.
Half the iX team didn't make it to the conference.
Oh.
But they still did awesome with the 3 people they had there.
Yeah, they always are showing pictures too of conferences they attend, and they always they were by the way resharing some other really talented photographers too. Like they were a great feed to tap into. Like here's a great shot of one of the rooms.
That was mostly Olivier Robert, who is a friend of mine, and Will Bachman does some stuff too from the BSD Talk podcast. He takes a lot of good pictures too.
Oh yeah, great. Yeah, I'm waiting. You know. Boy, you guys always know how to eat. You guys are so good at that.
We had Thai food the one night, pizza, Indian.
So iX was a sponsor of the conference?
They were the premium sponsor. The
and
top
Netflix too, huh?
Yep. And a couple other places as well.
Yeah, well, iX Systems is a huge part of the community. And
yes.
The reason why Alan and I stress that is we've been doing this for a long time now. And the measure of how involved someone is with the community is also the measurement of the quality of the product and the understanding of that product they're going to have. And that means when they're building you something, a solution that's either extremely high-end or a solution that's just something for a small business or your home office or whatever it is, the knowledge behind that product is just absolutely invaluable. And it's sort of the secret of the industry because nobody matches iX Systems at that level of not only software expertise, but hardware expertise too. And Alan, don't you have a new rig on the way right now?
Yeah, it's FedEx has it right now. It should get here tomorrow.
Oh man, are you excited?
It was supposed to get here today, but customs. Not anybody's fault.
Yeah.
But yeah, tomorrow. So for next week, I should be able to show it off.
Oh, awesome! All right, well, I can't wait to see it. Is it a nice rig? Is it?
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember I was talking at BSDCan. I was talking to some people about it. The Beehive guys were. I had lent them. When I first bought my last iX Systems box, that you remember that giant 4U beast with all the 36 hard drives, they needed one of those brand new processors to test some new features Intel had for Beehive.
Yeah.
And so I actually lent them that machine for a week before I actually formatted it and set it up.
Yeah.
And they're like, we know we can't borrow that one again, but do you have another one? I'm like, well, I just so happen to have one that's being shipped right now. And I might be able to let you borrow it.
You're a good guy.
But then they're like, we should just buy one. How much was it? When I told them how much the one I bought for my house was, it's like, you can get that cheap? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's well built.
And it's crazy. This is with 2 of the E5 Xeon 2620 V2s with all the latest features for virtualization, like vectorize this and
the direct disk access and goodness.
Yeah, but just this crazy stuff. And the whole system, and they customize it right down to the level of everything I needed. You know? There's no parts in it I don't need.
Right.
So there's no wasted money.
Right.
And it's just... And then they're like, do you need us to like install the OS and configure the BIOS for you? I was like, not this time because it's going to my house.
Wow. I mean, they have this white glove approach. We got an email from a viewer who said, yeah, wasn't that a great email? I forwarded that off to the team over at iX because I just thought this is...
and then I didn't know you did that, so I did it too. And I'm like, yeah, we already saw this.
Well, we've gotten a couple recently, and I was like, they got to see this because, we've been talking about them for a little while.
Somebody in the chat room earlier today was like, I missed the first 5 minutes of TechSNAP because I was on the phone with iX.
Yeah, exactly. And and of course here at JB1 Studios, our backend storage is an iX FreeNAS Mini, and Alan, of course, is talking about these high-end rigs, and I got to give these guys over at iX a big congratulations because their TrueNAS software just achieved VMware Ready status. That is
fully approved and supported.
That's
to run
big.
NAS
And that's not an easy thing to get either. That is a process you have to go through.
There's a very short list of devices that are approved to be the backend storage for a large enterprise VMware deployment.
So congratulations, IX Systems. I mean, you know, they deserve it. They are a part of an elite people out there. They're making very few people are at their level, and this is pretty cool.
And just the number of committers they employ is ridiculous.
So here's how you get started. ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. You can also try out that ultimate guide to buying a new server for open source. 11 key traits you must absolutely demand from your provider. If you maybe want to read through that before you talk to management, it's a great way to go.
Give a copy to management and use it as explaining why.
We've got an email saying that worked.
That wasn't written by IX. That was written by somebody for IX.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody was just like, you know, I needed to write this to convince my boss.
Yeah.
And why don't you just give this to all your customers?
And it works. We've got an email saying it works. So that's awesome. ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. Yep. And a big thank you to IX Systems. We're really happy to have you guys sponsors of the TechSNAP program. Okay, Alan. So we got some more news to cover. This is the story that's been brewing for a few weeks. I think folks are probably familiar with the Replicant project. That's a fork, I guess, right?
Actually.
Oh, you weren't? Okay.
No.
Well, this
Replicant
is from
a fork of Android.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Go take it on.
So while working on Replicant, which is a full Libre version of Android, they ripped out all the proprietary stuff. They discovered that the proprietary program running on the application processor that's in charge of handling communications via the modem to actually talk to the wireless network, implements a backdoor that lets the modem perform remote file I/O operations on the file system on the device. So not even anywhere in the Android software, but hard-coded into the firmware of the modem, basically.
Yeah.
Or the application processor that controls the modem.
Yeah, you could wipe Android all day long, put different ROMs on there, and you're not even touching this stuff. This is below that. And a whole different set of processor and everything.
So, gives people that know about the backdoor access to read and write files off the disk on your phone. That's kind of ridiculous.
Yes.
This program is shipped with the Samsung Galaxy devices and makes it possible for the modem to read, write, and delete files on the phone's storage. On several phone models, this program runs with sufficient rights to access and modify the user's personal data, not just the operating system files.
And pull GPS coordinates too, right?
Yep, and anything else that you have written down, like password stores for, like if you save a password in your browser or something, or whatever you do. Today's phones come with two separate processors, one for general purpose applications that run on the main operating system, like Android itself, other stuff. The other, known as the modem, which does the modem, baseband, and radio, is in charge of communications with the mobile telephone network. Part of that is the FCC has to approve that one for it to be allowed to be used.
Yes. Well, and
which
also
raises other questions about the malware and the firmware.
The carriers will only allow certain modems on their cellular network as well, so the manufacturers are very limited. In fact, sometimes the carriers have their own firmware they put on those modems. I think most major carriers do that.
Yeah, so it raises the question of who put that there, right?
Well, that's a good question.
These systems are known to have backdoors that make it possible to remotely convert the modem into a remote spying device. The spying can involve activating the device's microphone, gaining a precise GPS location of the device, accessing the camera, as well as taking any user data stored on the phone. Moreover, the modems are connected most of the time to the operator's network, meaning the backdoor is pretty much always available. The technical description of the issue, as well as the list of known affected devices, is available on the Replicant wiki.
Man.
Yeah.
And the thing is Replicant. Okay, so Replicant is supposed to be a free and open fork of the Android project, but the problem is it doesn't really solve this problem because this baseband operating system and processors are totally outside the control of the other operating system. So Replicant, in a sense, is they can make patches to their fork of Android to try to circumvent some of this stuff, but in a sense, there's not a lot they can do, from what I can understand.
Yep. Apparently, on the Galaxy Nexus S, there's also a program running as root that even enhances it, and that might be how they came across it.
Oh yes, and the So on the Galaxy S, that's where they can get root access to the operating system. They include some sample files here too.
Yep.
The sample file documentation is stored in /data/radio.
Yep. It was pretty interesting. If you're interested, you can go check it out. But especially if you have a Samsung Galaxy of pretty much any description, they have a list here of the different affected ones.
Yeah.
It's a little too long to just read off the list.
Huh.
So definitely check that out if you have a Samsung phone.
Yeah, I guess it's also, according to this, it's against the EULA. When you get these phones, it's against the EULA to do this.
To look at any of that stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So, this is why when we hear about, was it the Black OS? There was these different secure OSs for phones. I'm not seeing it. It seems like if you've got a cellular modem that's running this separate set of processors and software that, might. And the other thing to remember is that separate set of processors and code is always connected to the internet. It's always with a data connection. Even when your phone is off in some cases in some of these phones, that thing can still be connected, which really blew my mind and is extremely creepy. They were talking about on some of these phones, the only way to completely kill the thing is to pull the battery, which is interesting because I've been reading Glenn Greenwald's book, and they talk about when they went to go meet Snowden, he was like, when they would come into his hotel room, it wasn't good enough just to turn the phone off. And if it was an iPhone and you couldn't remove the battery, he made them put it in the little mini fridge, so that way when they would activate the microphone, all they would hear was
or just the zzz of the mini fridge.
He told Greenwald that even though you have an iPhone and even though that iPhone doesn't work on the frequencies here in Hong Kong, they still have the ability to connect to that baseband and turn on the microphone. So put it in the fridge.
Or if they turn it on and it has file I/O access, it could be recording to the flash on the phone when it can't stream it and then send it off after.
So I wonder, though, if maybe on the plus side, okay, so I'm thinking like, oh, this isn't really a plus side, but is the reverse also true? Could you exploit the host Android OS and then take advantage of the capabilities of that baseband OS? If the baseband OS can get into Android, then couldn't you from Android get to the baseband OS and, say connect over somebody's Wi-Fi and turn on their microphone?
I don't know.
Don't know. Probably not. Probably not.
That takes some more engineering and stuff to see what you can do. And yes, it'll be the problem with a backdoor like this is that when a government or a manufacturer puts it there, they can't really guarantee that someone else won't figure out how it works,
right,
and be able to use it.
Yeah.
And so the NSA put it there for them to be able to listen to your phone calls. What happens when somebody else figures out how it works and starts listening to the phone calls?
Well, and it could always just be like, there's all kinds of cell phone providers have been caught installing creepy monitoring software so that way they can Verizon does this. Verizon will watch your location data and then they'll say, okay, well, they go to this bar and then they go to this bar, and so we know they like these kinds of foods, and then they will sell that location information to an advertiser who wants to commercialize or who wants to target that kind of food at you. That's pretty creepy, and the way they do it is with carrier IQ and things like that, which are installed on the phone. So they're already doing super creepy stuff just for marketing purposes, let alone the surveillance capabilities of it.
Exactly.
It's like the surveillance capabilities are just like a nice benefit for the NSA for the marketing reasons.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Alan, well, I want to pause right here and tell you a little bit how you can control back in the cloud with our next sponsor. Go over to DigitalOcean.com and use our new May Pro. Well, it's not so new anymore. Snap May. It's almost over. Let's rock for the month of May. Snap May over at DigitalOcean.com will get you a $10 credit on a DigitalOcean droplet. Let me tell you a little bit about DigitalOcean because they're pretty darn cool. DigitalOcean is simple cloud hosting dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up a cloud server. Users can create a cloud server in about 55 seconds. We got today an email. Somebody got it set up in 47 seconds. I've got a tweet saying 42 seconds. So your times will range, but I'd say if you are within the 55-second range, you're doing pretty good. But here's what you get for $5. $5! 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, a CPU, and 1 terabyte of transfer for $5! It's crazy. And if you use our promo code SNAPMAY, you're going to get that $10 credit. You can try it for 2 months for free. And DigitalOcean has data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, and Amsterdam. But I think one of my most favorite and beloved features of DigitalOcean is their awesome control panel. The interface is simple. It's very straightforward and intuitive, and power users can replicate it with their API for scripting, for automation, for Puppet integration, for smartphone apps. It's so great having that API, and you can try it all out for free for 2 months when you use the promo code SNAPMay. Take advantage of their hourly pricing if you've got a project. If you got a big download, I got an email from an individual who lives out of Israel, and he says there's a few services he needs in the U.S. for his job. And he has OpenVPN set up on a DigitalOcean droplet because it's a machine he has root access to. It's a machine that he controls and trusts. The connections are crazy great. They have simple image droplet backup. Boom, you can make a backup of it. So he does an OpenVPN to a DigitalOcean droplet, and it's all under his control. And he says it's a great setup, and it works really well for him. And the thing is, these SSD drives give you that density, that speed. SSDs are so great on a server. So go over to DigitalOcean.com and use the promo code SNAPMay when you check out. Get that $10 credit. And a really big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. We've had so many folks try it out, and they're loving it. It's great for developers. It's great for enthusiasts. It's great for folks who just want to learn, or somebody who maybe wants to take their own file sync under their own control and put a sync server up in the cloud that you own. Any of it. DigitalOcean.com, SNAPMay. And a huge thank you to DigitalOcean. Okay, Alan, so I think we got a little Heartbleed update to do, don't we?
Kind of, yes.
All right, lay it on me.
So Netcraft, the guys originally responsible for the whole the uptime tracking.
And what web server software does it run and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then they kind of expanded out into tracking malware and having blacklists for that. And one of the other things they do is an SSL certificate survey. And using that data, they were able to take a look at the actual impact on certificates from the Heartbleed thing. So they did a survey of SSL certificates based on between when that happened and now. And they outlined the 3 steps that are required to completely replace an SSL certificate. First, you have to generate a new private key, right? Because that's the part that actually controls your use of the certificate. And that was the part that Heartbleed would let people steal, right? The certificate itself is actually public, right? You publish that out to people when they connect so that they can verify that it is what they're expecting. So yeah, you need to generate a new private key. Then you request a new certificate based on that key. And then once you install that, you revoke the old certificate so it can't be used anymore. Right? And then you should probably also destroy the old private key because that's the only way that connections that don't have perfect forward secrecy could be decrypted. So if you destroy it, that means they can never be decrypted. Less of an issue now that more and more people are using perfect forward secrecy, but especially for older certificates, it's good to destroy that key. Anyway, they found that only about 43% of certificates have actually been reissued, meaning a lot of people, like 57% of the web servers on the world, didn't actually change their certificate. Now, that's not necessarily bad. You know, some places were not affected, right? If you weren't using OpenSSL, if you were using something else, then you weren't affected. Or like my servers, we were using FreeBSD 9.2, so we had an older OpenSSL that wasn't affected, right? 0.9 instead of 1.0. So we didn't have to redo our certificates. But 43% of places have redone their certificates, which is actually a bit higher than I would have expected. A lot of places probably just didn't bother. So seeing 43% of them that did is actually quite interesting. However, they found that only about 20% of certificates had actually been revoked. So 23% of the people that are, so these are absolute numbers, not, so when I say 20% of the certificates, it's not 20% of the 43%, it's 20% overall. So that 20% reissued, meaning 23% of the total have not reissued their, or not revoked the old certificate. So they have a new certificate that they're using now, but they didn't have the old one revoked. So if someone had stolen the old one, they can still use it. And if they have the private key for it, then, which is how they would have stolen it, that means they could do a man-in-the-middle attack and it wouldn't be detected because technically both certificates are valid. Not just, right? So both are valid. And so until that certificate expires, it's still valid.
Yes.
And it should have been revoked.
Yes.
However, some places, like I know Start SSL, which gave out certificates for free, they charged a fee to revoke it because of the amount of work it was for them. And mostly just to prevent people doing it all the damn time. And so that might be accounted for some of it, but for a lot of it, there's really no excuse why the old certificates weren't revoked when they were replaced.
Laziness? Do you think they didn't want to break compatibility?
I would understand.
Like people who had it baked into some application?
Partly that, or just, you know, you have a lot of servers, you start replacing it and you haven't done it on all, so you don't want to revoke it yet.
Yeah.
Or just waiting an amount of time, but
or even like backup images and stuff. Yeah, backup images. I'd be
interested to see what these numbers look like in another month after Heartbleed.
I mean, I hope reduced by half. But I don't think so. I mean, it seems like this is the kind of thing people were going to jump on and then they're done with it. And now as the buzz kind of settles down, they've moved on.
But worse than that, they found that 7% of the certificates that were reissued used the same private key, defeating the entire point. Right? The private key, not the certificate, but the private key is the part that needed to be changed.
Yeah.
But you can't change the private key without changing the certificate, because the certificate is locked to the private key, right? The whole point of the certificate is the certificate is like the public app, right? You can only use the certificate if you own the private key for it. So if you change the private key, you have to reissue the certificate. So, but a lot of places, or in this case, 7% of the places, got new certificates but use the same private key, meaning if someone stole the private key, then this accomplished absolutely nothing. They still have complete access to the new certificate.
Yes.
So it's worse because they think they're safe. They think they've done everything, but they haven't. So that's a big one. And they said in total, 14%, only 14% of sites have actually done all 3 steps.
It's pretty pathetic, Alan. 14%?
Yeah.
I mean, like...
Yeah, well,
that's discouraging, to be honest with you.
43% have done something and probably think that they've done enough.
No.
And only 14% actually have done all 3 steps.
Huh. Yeah, that's discouraging. I thought this seemed like a unique response. I thought this was like, 14% have done the whole thing. I mean, that's pathetic.
It is.
Like, I thought this would be the one that we all respond to. I mean, I did my part. You did your part. Well, you didn't have
as
to.
We see, a lot of people think they've done enough.
Yeah, I suppose.
And it just goes to show there's a lot of people doing this crypto stuff that don't understand.
What does it take? What does it take? I mean, at what? How much hype? How much talk about it? You know, how many websites have to be put up? How many blog posts does Bruce Schneier have to write before people will patch their S?
The problem is it's the people that don't read Bruce Schneier that are doing it wrong.
Well, okay, so is it also, do you think, like so many of these systems are just left unmanaged? Like they're just set up once and left alone and then people don't come back?
Yes, that is a big part of the problem.
That's what I'm wondering, is if this is maybe an indictment of how many systems are left untouched. Yep. Zombie servers.
Well, it's so much because of lack of proper maintenance and stuff, or just the fact that we've come to accept the fact that upgrading your OS can break it. You know, and that shouldn't be the way it is.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people are afraid of updates.
Yeah, and it shouldn't have to be that way.
No. It set us back, in a way.
Yep.
That's a heck of a story, and you guys can find links. And Alan specifically pulled out all these juicy stats and threw them in the show notes if you want to read those over for yourself. Just go find TechSNAP 163 over on the Jupiter Broadcasting website and click on that and scroll down. But before we go any further, let's stop right here, if you don't mind, and thank our last sponsor this week. And one of my favorite companies is Ting. Ting is mobile that makes sense. My mobile service provider. Go to techsnap.ting.com to get started. Why? Why do that? Because 98% of people save money when they switch to Ting. I know I did. I'm not kidding. I went from about $140 a month to about $30 to $40 per month, depending on my usage. And that's with 2 smartphones on my account. And here's why. Ting only charges you for what you use. It's a flat $6 plus your usage, and then any applicable taxes. So in my case, I use mostly data, very little voice, and a ton of Wi-Fi. So my bill is absolutely economical. And what I love about my Ting plan is I know that whatever I need, it's available. Picture messaging, text messaging, hotspot, tethering, it's all available. All of the features, voicemail, all of it as part of your Ting plan for a flat $6. And what's really cool is if you've been tempting, go over to techsnap.ting.com right now, because they got something really cool going on just for a few days. You can Ting your T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, iPhone, or Samsung Galaxy. If you've wanted to bring a device that's on one of the other networks that isn't compatible with Ting, and you'd be like, man, I would switch if I could bring my X over to Ting. Go read their latest blog post. They're working with their partners, Glide. Glide is going to sell your device for you through this program, and then Ting will reimburse you with Ting credit to cover any difference between what you spend and what you collect. So say you have an iPhone 5 or a Samsung Galaxy S3 on the Verizon network or on the T-Mobile network or whatever it is. If you sell that via Glide, Ting is going to hook you up on the difference in that in terms of credit, and in some cases that might pay for your bill for a little while, because if you also go to techsnap.ting.com, you're going to get a $25 credit on your first month of service if you want to buy a brand new device right from Ting. And why wouldn't you? Because then you own it outright. You flip the whole value scale around. That's the way I go. And Alan, too, the other thing is they have a whole range of devices now. I'm telling you, they've got everything from like the high-end HTC M8 down to devices that are under $100, and these are contract-free, no early termination, only paying for what you use.
Sometimes get hung up on the paying a little bit for the phone, but you save so much money by owning the phone.
Yeah, I think that's an American thing. I think we're the only ones that get, like, everybody else, I mean, I don't know how Canada does it actually, but I know, like, I hear this from our European viewers all the time. Like, that's how we do it over here anyways, because it makes economically more sense for us.
Yep.
That's why Ting is mobile makes sense.
In Canada, partly we passed a law that limited the contract length to 2 years, which helped a lot. But
Yeah, and also Ting has some just data devices. If you want to say, like, the Netgear Zing, $139. You own that hotspot outright, and then it's just a flat $6 plus your usage. They got the Novatel MiFi 5580 tri-band LTE, $119 when you use our TechSNAP discount. You could buy that; it'll ship tomorrow.
Nice.
And then you've got an always ready data connection with tri-band LTE capabilities. They've also got Alan's true and tried Samsung Nexus S for 127 bones unlocked. You own it. Right out there.
I paid a lot more for mine.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that's how it goes, Alan. They got all kinds of devices. So go over to techsnap.ting.com to get started. Techsnap.ting.com. Even just visiting there and check out what Ting has to offer. Help support our show. And I also encourage you to try out their savings calculator. I think you'll be pretty impressed. I did the numbers. I literally can buy a new laptop every 2 years with the money I'm saving for Ting.
Exactly.
And that'll be my excuse for Ange in another year. Ange, I saved that money. Ange, baby, I need to get this laptop. It's gear. And you can use the same excuse, my friend. It goes either way. It doesn't matter. TechSnap.ting.com. And a big thanks to Ting for sponsoring the TechSnap program. Oh, man, Alan. I can't help myself. I'm a gear junkie, I think. I think that's just a good thing I got into this kind of gig where it's kind of applicable. All right, anything else we want to cover in the news segment?
Nope.
No? Okay. All right, well, we got a whole bunch of huge feedback segments. So with all that done, it's time for the TechSNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to TechSNAP at JupiterBroadcasting.com or pop in that contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website, or even better, like our first submitter starting a thread in our brand new subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. And Alan, I love this first email. We got an email and a subreddit, and Ninja Aaron was smart enough to put it in the subreddit so that way he knew I'd see it. Because my Thursday morning routine is I sit down and I pull up the unfilter. That's Wednesday morning. I sit down, I pull up the TechSNAP subreddit, and I go through and see what the viewers have been talking about and see if there's any feedback in there for us. I can, put it all in one spot. It's nice. And so Ninja Aaron writes in, get this. Mm-hmm. I stumbled into a quote-unquote exploit, and then I got a job offer. So thanks, Jupiter Broadcasting. It goes like this. The other day, I was working at my mindless retail job for a major multinational retailer that everyone's heard of, and discovered they had made a point-of-sales device more Linuxy. It was the same name. It was a Java app, but the fonts had been changed to that horrible upstream XFT rendering, and there were some new things in the taskbar, including an X11 logo. I clicked on one of these new things in the taskbar, and I got an old-school Unix program running in a terminal. I've only used Linux at home and on my DigitalOcean droplet thanks to some of the JB promo codes, but I never knew enough to get a shell from inside this program, which happened to have read access to the root file system and ran under the same users as the point-of-sales operating system software was running. After contemplating for several days because I was afraid of getting fired, I showed it to my boss and said something about blah, 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 execute arbitrary commands, blah, 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 credit card information. This is bad. You should email corporate IT about this. And that was it. Next day, it was my day off, and I was awakened from my beauty sleep to join a conference call with the corporate head of IT security. I had to tell them I had to tell them what I did, and I had to write a little report. I got to use fancy words that I learned from TechSNAP Blast Encoder Radio, like keylogger, privilege escalation, and island hopping. Now they think I'm some kind of genius. Corporate guys are writing me fan mail and calling me at work and at home, literally. My boss had the next day off, and he missed the emails about me. They want to schedule meetings with me for God knows what. They want to make me an employee of the millennium, figuratively speaking, and they're writing articles about me in corporate newsletters, literally. They say I potentially saved us from being the next target and may have saved the company millions of dollars. More importantly than any of that, they're offering me an interview for a position on the security team as a pen tester. I have no experience in network penetration, no IT or CS education, and no related to work experience. But if I can bluff my way into this job, I will do just that. So, thanks Internet for getting me this job opportunity for which I may not have been qualified. Any tips for the interview? I'm watching the TechSNAP back catalog. He says I've more historically been a last unplugged Coder Radio guy until now, so I can have an intelligent conversation. How about that, Alan?
That's pretty amazing. I wonder if it's the retailer I'm thinking of, because I know people on the corporate security team there.
Well, I say, good step. Go back, go watch. Here's what you do, man. Ninja Aaron, go watch all of the coverage we've done on the Target thing, and at least have that in your head, because it sounds like they're pretty fired up about that Target stuff. I didn't even think about the fact that, these retail outlets are going to be overreacting like this on any kind of Target-related kind of esque thing.
Yeah.
I mean, because he found a terminal is what he found, right?
Right, he got a shell on the POS, and
remember the Target.
Not necessarily somebody could do that remotely, but still.
Weren't the Target ones running XP embedded too?
Yes, they were, and it sounds like these guys probably were, and then migrated their Java app to a Linux machine because XP wasn't supported anymore.
Yeah. But Ninja Aaron, there's some good comments in there. I did appreciate the humor in the post too.
And then I was just thinking, well, you should tell the corporate IT guys to watch our episodes about the Target stuff. But you don't want them to accidentally stumble on this episode.
Right. Well,
at least until you have a job and you're kind of secure. Then you can spread the word about how awesome
there you go. Yeah, there you go. And go look at, there's some great penetration Linux Live CDs out there you can play with. Yep. Go watch the back catalog.
Metasploitable is a very good one to look at. It's called Metasploitable.
Yep.
It's a learning CD or learning live system for Metasploit that's specifically designed to be exploitable, so that you can use the exploits against it and see what that works like.
Well, a lot of people end up in jobs they're not fully qualified for until they get the job, and they have to learn quick. And it sounds like Ninja Aaron's up for the challenge.
If you manage it, that's the whole point.
That's what counts.
What makes you the guy they want. You don't have to have gone to school for it. You just have to be able to figure it out.
And sometimes it's a little bit about having a bit of an intuition about these kinds of things and thinking like the hacker, which it kind of sounds like Ninja Aaron was doing. So
exactly.
All right, Tom writes in, and he's got a question about it's like ZFS, send, and SSH root logins all in one. Yep. Says he's seen every episode of TechSNAP. He says, I'm having a problem with ZFS send and receive. I have a server running ZFS, which I would like to be able to back up on my own NAS running and using ZFS send and receive over an SSH pipe. It has occurred to me that I would need root privileges to use the ZFS commands. Does this mean I need to enable logging in over SSH as root? I've heard you recommend against this several times. Is there any way I could get around the need to enable SSH login for root, or am I getting something completely wrong?
Yeah, so firstly, never, ever, 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 ever allow login as root for SSH. What other people will tell you to do, if they don't know a lot about ZFS, is you could just prefix, if you do it right, you can use sudo. But again, that's not the right way. ZFS has already solved this problem. ZFS has a system called delegation, where you can actually delegate a specific user to be allowed to do ZFS send or ZFS receive without being root.
Aha.
And I've actually wrote an article on this that will very soon appear in the FreeBSD handbook, but it's not there yet. So I've linked to my personal copy of the handbook that has it. And I have the link in the show notes. And basically, you can just delegate access to specific commands to any user on the system, or a group of users or whatever. So you can actually delegate anything root can do with ZFS, you can delegate to a user. And you can delegate only for certain stuff. So you can say, hey, user Bob owns this directory that has, say, is an SVN checkout of the work or whatever, right? And so he has the ability to change the properties on it, to do whatever he wants, to create sub data sets, whatever he wants. But he's not allowed to do anything to the rest of the system. Or I have a user that only has the ability to receive a replication stream. And that's what we use at Scale Engine. We have a user actually just called SE Mirror, and all it can do is receive replicated streams. So it just sits, and then so we log in with SSH keys as that unprivileged user. It's not allowed to do anything, can't see anything. All it does is receive a stream and write it to a certain directory. That's all it can do.
That's a really great way to do that.
It has its own separate system of ACLs and groups specifically for all the ZFS commands. So, you can say this user is allowed to mount and unmount these directories, but he's not allowed to do anything else. Or this user is allowed to create all these, but he's not allowed to delete anything, or whatever possible combination you want to do. So we have another unprivileged user that runs at Scale Engine, and all it's allowed to do is tell how much space each user is using. And it's just our accounting program. It looks up every night, figures out how much space each different user is using, and bills them for it. And it doesn't have any other access to their files. All it can do is look at the accounting data and see how much space they're taking up. And that's one of the things. The best way to describe it, I heard at BSDCan. It's like ZFS is like bacon is for food.
I don't know quite what that means, but I'm going to go with it.
ZFS is the bacon, or bacon is the ZFS of food.
There you go.
There, that sounds better.
And
I forget what it exactly was.
You also
ZFS is as awesome as bacon.
You also put a link into ZXfer. Is that Xfer?
Yes. So if you're doing replication a lot, I've linked the script that I didn't write most of the script, but it wasn't being maintained, so I took over maintainership of it. And it's basically a script specifically for replicating. I added the ability for it to do progress bars and stuff. But what it does is it looks at all the snapshots that exist on the source and replicates them to the destination. And if you delete some from the source, it can automatically delete them from the destination as well. So that we use a rolling snapshot system where we snapshot every 15 minutes, but then get rid of some of the middle ones, but keep back going a month. Like keep one snapshot a day going back a month, or one snapshot a week going back a month, and one a day going back a week, and one an hour going back a day, and so on. And it takes care of all that. It just makes your life much easier.
What a good, sir. What a good. Well, while we're talking...
So the link to the handbook article will walk you through all the steps you need in order to do all your ZFS replication without needing a root user at all.
That's your personal copy of it, too. It's not out yet.
Well, yes, but it will be out fairly soon.
Yes.
We're working at a BSDCan, but it needs an edit pass, and it's like 20,000 words, so it takes a while to edit.
Oh, jeez Louise. Yeah, holy smokes. Okay, well, Boston writes in, long-time viewer, and he's got kind of a ZFS FreeNAS related question. Love the show, but I have a problem. I hope you can give me some help and advice. I would like to build a FreeNAS rig. I have several hard drives, but he wants to know the best setup for data safety and get the what I guess what he's trying to say is get the most space out of it. I'm also not sure if I'm using the term ZPool, volume, VDEV, and data correctly, but here goes. I have four 2 terabyte disks and 2 1 terabyte disks. If I understand correctly, the safest configuration would be 4 2 terabyte disks and 1 ZPool with volume A in RAID Z2. The 2 1 terabyte disks would be in a separate ZPool, each in its own VDEV, and then mirrored. So if one of the 1 terabyte disks fails, I don't lose data from this pool. Is there a better setup? Thank you. Best regards.
Well, yeah, he's using some of the terminology wrong. So the pool, in general, you only want one pool. Right? All your disks in one pool. And then you have multiple VDEVs, and a VDEV can either be one disk, which you usually don't want to do because there's no redundancy, or a transform like a mirror or a RAID 1 or RAID 2 or RAID Z1 or Z2 or whatever. With 4 2 terabyte disks and 2 1 terabyte disks, I would recommend doing mirrors. So one mirror that's a pair of 2 terabytes, a second mirror that's a pair of 2 terabytes, and a third mirror that is a pair of 1 terabytes. And that'll give you 5 terabytes of space. That's not that great, but what are you going to do? Because the other option is to try to do it all as one RAID group. If you do it all as one RAID Z1, you would get 4 terabytes usable, which isn't as much. Although, if in the future you replace the 2 1 terabyte drives, one at a time, with bigger drives, then the pool would snap and be bigger. And you would go from the 4 terabytes to, you would get, if you swapped them out with 2 or bigger terabyte drives, you would get 8 terabytes of space. And that extra space would just appear magically once you replace the 2 drives and online them.
So I have four 4-terabyte drives. And in total, I think I get 5.5 terabytes of usable space somewhere, or like something, I can't remember quite. And then guess what happened while you were gone? I meant to tell you about this. So we reloaded our FreeNAS rig. We got the latest FreeNAS installed on the FreeNAS Mini and set up a new pool. And then 2 days into using it, one of the drives died. And so I log into FreeNAS, and it gives me the red light, says, it's running in degraded mode. So I pull the drive out. And it's funny, like we're still getting like 117 megabytes a second writing to that array, even with one of the drives down. However, where FreeNAS for me kind of falls down is there was not an interface in the FreeNAS GUI to do a one-to-one drive swap. So I pulled out a dead 4-terabyte drive, got a new 4-terabyte drive from Amazon, popped it in, and I couldn't just say, add this drive to the RAID.
Well, because you don't want to add it. Because adding it is something different.
I want to do like some kind of swap.
Will add. Well, yeah, it's called replace.
Okay, but there's no there's no FreeNAS GUI implementation for the replace.
I think there is. I don't know where it is, but there's somewhere in the documentation that explains how to replace.
I was thinking I was going to have to bust down to the command line to do it, which
you can. Yeah, but I'm sure that Drew has very simply documented how to do it.
I'll have to do some Googling, because I was digging through the UI and I didn't see any option in there, because it wants to add the new drive as like as a new
a separate thing. Yes, because it thinks you need to tell it. Part of it is you're thinking of it the wrong way. You're not adding a new drive. You're replacing a dead drive.
Right.
Because a lot of people make the mistake of trying to add that new drive. It's like a non-parodied thing, and
then it's part of the pool.
You don't have the ability to remove a drive from ZFS yet, although we expect to have that by the end of the year.
So I can replace a drive though.
You can definitely, yes.
Okay.
There's the zpool replace command. Yeah. Just say, hey, replace this dead drive with this drive, and it'll.
Now, if the drive's already gone from my system, how do I know which drive to replace?
When you do zpool status, you'll see it has a globally unique ID for the missing drive. That's what you use to identify the missing drive. I remember seeing that
last time. I ran into that last time that I had this problem. I recall that. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to do that tonight, I think, because we've been running with 3 drives, and I got the 4th.
But you don't want to keep doing that.
Yeah.
With Z1, it's just not going to last very long.
But it's interesting now. Every non-Western Digital Red drive I've had over the last, because they've all gotten about 3 or 4 years old. Every non-Western Digital Red drive has now popped. I don't know if it's just my house. I don't know what it. Although this is happening at 2 places now, so I'm only buying Western Digital Reds for my NAS here at JB1 now. It's just I'm switching to those. All right, next email comes in from Daniel. He wants to follow up on our DevOps topic we talked about recently. He says, I want to comment about what Alan had to say about DevOps. I would consider myself to be a DevOps engineer. I come from a background in traditional sys administration, so that makes me consider myself a DevOps. So this is why I consider myself DevOps engineer. I think it's more about the methodologies that I use in setting up my infrastructure. Everything is managed by Chef. I can spin up a new infrastructure with a couple of commands with that. The non-trivial cookbooks I've written mostly follow traditional coding practices with automatic litany, unit tests, and integration tests. He goes on to say, DevOps methodologies seem to be more about automating where possible and making things repeatable through coding and relying less on checklists and manual process. Other piece of the puzzle is gathering metrics whenever possible and integrating monitoring of those metrics intelligently to address problems before or very quickly after a problem arises. There's more to it than that, of course, but having just some DevOps days here in Austin last week, I can tell you the vast majority of DevOps scenes are coming from an ops background. It's more of a culture operation methodologies than devs running servers. Well, yeah, all that stuff he just said doesn't sound like a DevOps methodology. It just sounds like good system.
This is a regular operations methodology. Right? The definition of DevOps is supposed to be a developer doing stuff they're not supposed to do.
Yeah, that's how I picture. I picture DevOps as like the developer ends up getting in the position where he's working on a web app, so now he's also throwing up Apache with some wonky config. And I don't think somebody who's configuring Chef and writing those cookbooks, those recipes, somebody who's doing monitoring and then doing system analysis based on the reporting of that monitoring, that's all sysadmin stuff. That just sounds like if you're a DevOps, you're probably a little bit more like Alan, where you lean very heavily to the ops side, but you can do some dev on the side when you need to, is what it sounds like to me. And I don't think we need these labels. I just say focus on what you're good at. That's my take on it. And if and usually if you're doing a lot of system administration, being able to automate a few things with a little development, if it's Perl or Bash or PHP, that's not a bad thing. It doesn't necessarily make you DevOps though. It just makes you a sysadmin who has another skill that they just don't use as much.
Yep.
Matthew writes in with a second opinion on security concerns. He wants our second opinion. He says, hey, Chris and Alan, I've written a small Python application. Now get this, Alan. It's designed to centrally manage SSH public keys from a Git repository. The basic way it works is as follows. The SSH connection is attempted, configured. So then he goes out to a Git repository and he clones it down. Public keys found in the Git repository for users being authenticated and printed to standard out for the SSH daemon to read. The script is designed to be run as an authorized keys command in the SSHD config, and of course it won't run as any privileged user. My question is on the security concerns of this. In my view, it's much like managing keys through LDAP. If the LDAP server is compromised, you have a problem. Using Git gives you the audit of what changes were made, who made them, and why they were made. The application is in pre-alpha right now. I plan on adding a few things like explicitly disabling authentication for root by default and other such things. It doesn't seem to me that there are other obvious problems of keeping a Git server from being other than keeping the Git server from getting compromised. Are there other security problems that are not solvable in this setup? Your thoughts?
I'm not sure about security problems, although making it like do a fresh Git checkout or something every time you try to log in is just going to make logging in slow. And if the repo's down, you can't log in. That could be a major issue and things like that. I manage my authorized keys file with Puppet. I have a list of keys, and it just is pushed to each server that way. And then my Puppet configs live in my source.
What kind of
control.
Change auditing does Puppet provide for that setup? Because that's one thing I do like about his Git
that's
setup.
Why my Puppet config files are in my case, SVN, but if you use Git, then you would have the exact same thing as putting the keys directly in Git, because you're actually putting the keys in a config file in Git.
Yeah.
But with the way he's doing it, it looks interesting. I've seen people do it with LDAP, so I'm guessing it's okay.
Yeah.
The things to look at would definitely be make sure that somebody can't do a man-in-the-middle attack between you and GitHub or wherever you're hosting
with their own fake Git. Yeah.
So you want to make sure you're using pulling it over HTTPS, and that you have certificate verification turned on and set up so that a fake certificate, like a self-signed certificate, won't match, and your command will fail to log in during a man-in-the-middle attack instead. And you're going to want to make sure there's some way to log in if your ability to reach your Git repo is down. Right?
Yeah.
Or maybe just make it fail gracefully. Like if you're setting up the script that's going to do it, make it cat the hard-coded authorized keys file, and then append to that list.
There you go.
And have a decent timeout.
That's exactly how you should do it.
So yeah, if your attempt to talk to the Git repo takes more than 10 seconds, give up and just use the manual list or something. That way,
or
if
even 5
that's
seconds.
down or unreachable or whatever, you still have a way to log in.
And the other thing I would wonder too is if there were servers that were under really, really heavy load, and you were doing an SSH session, and it had to do a Git checkout and write that to the file system and then read that.
I think he's doing it to a pipe and never touching the file system.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right.
Not sure.
Yes, no, that is right. Yep, never mind.
Although I imagine rather than doing a checkout every time, we'd have a checkout to disk, and then we'd just be doing whatever the Git version of SVN.
Well, that's what I was thinking. It's like if you were going to answer 5 logins in the span of 1 minute, it might just be worth doing one checkout for all of those logins, right?
Right, but he's going to be doing it per user, I think.
Yeah,
so,
he is.
That shouldn't be too big of a deal. A server should be able to handle that. The other one is... I forget what I was going to say. Oh, depending how you're reaching the Git repo. If you're using SSH to reach the Git repo, then making an SSH connection out every time you try to make one in, it gets a little, gimmicky. But if you're just doing it over HTTPS or whatever, it should be fine.
You remember last week we were talking about how to test really big connections, really fast connections. Well, viewer Scott wrote in and said, you can bang on my connection if you want. I have a public IP perf server set up. Anyone is free to test their network connection. I have it running on a 40 gigabit Google Fiber connection. You can go to iperf.scottlinux.com to get the detailed connections if you want to waste some of Scott's Google Fiber bandwidth, you can have at it. It's a fun way if you've got a pretty fast connection and you want
good way to test your upload.
40 gigabits. I mean,
give you a full stream, and
there's no way that's Google Fiber. There's no way Google Fiber is 40 gigabits. No way.
Well, I think he means 40 megabits. Maybe not. I don't know. Where is it?
He says the server is located. It's not Google Fiber. It's located in Fremont, California.
Oh, okay.
And it is 40 gigabits. He doesn't mean
I doubt the network interface on a server is 40 gigabits. It's just on a 40 gigabit upstream.
Well, yeah.
But still, that's something.
Speaking of fiber, how's your fiber going?
Actually, apparently he's at Linode. But so the guy came and spliced all the equipment in yesterday.
Yeah.
And the guys at the data center promised to have the cross connects finished by Monday.
Oh.
So next week I might be coming to you in like super ridiculous HD.
4K. 8K.
Well, my camera doesn't go that high.
No, I know.
But currently, like, my camera is maxing out and sending you like the 5 megabits that my connection can handle.
You think you can do more than that?
Yeah, I'll be able to send you more when I have
No, I mean
fiber
Skype.
optic.
Can Skype do more than that?
It's maxing out my connection now at 5 megabits.
Well,
so
then try it. We'll try it because I can pull down at 100. So let's do it.
Exactly. I'm gonna, blasting you like 8 or something will probably make me look all kinds of pretty.
Yeah, or maybe not. All right, Alan. Our last email comes in from Esteban. He just gives us a little historical perspective here. He says, guys, what we are seeing is history repeat itself all over again. He's referring to the net neutrality stuff. Rockefeller made secret agreements with railroads to ship his oil in return for discounts, and his shipments went before others. And then he used the 1873 recession to wipe out his competitors who were unable to find space on the rails to ship their goods. Way back when, there were railroad magnates who had a monopoly. Who had a monopoly over the rails. Thank you. He says now we have internet barons. So he's essentially equating today's internet monopolies to the late 1800s railroad monopolies. I suppose you could draw some parallels there. It is in some ways like history repeats itself for the new modern delivery mechanism. So thanks, Esteban. It's good reflection.
Right. So in the meantime, I've actually found the answer to your problem. So there's a section in the FreeNAS user's guide on page 133 of 280.
Okay.
Chapter 6.3.12, replacing a failed disk.
Will you toss that in the notes for me?
Yeah, I did. But you go to storage, volumes, view volumes. You find the disk that's broken. It'll be listed there as like offline or degraded or whatever. And you click the little replace disk button and then select the new disk, and it will make all the fun stuff happen.
I'm going to do it. Storage, view volumes. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, storage, volumes, view volumes. Find the dead disk and click replace.
There's ZFS Volume Manager and view disks. But I don't see the dead disk in there.
So are you in storage?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then go to volumes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, there's not
view volumes.
There's not just a volumes button. Well, I'll play with it some more after the break.
Hold on, I'm looking at the picture. On the left side, you have volumes, and you expand it out, and you have like your different volumes.
Yep. I got my volume
and
in
then,
there. View disks.
One,
I see view disks. And view volumes.
View volumes, yes.
Yeah,
That's what you
yeah.
want to
Here, I'll show it so you guys can see it too.
Okay. And then you should have a tab called volume status now on the right side.
I have a tab that says... No, I do not. I do not have a tab that says volume
when you
status.
click view volumes, when you click view volumes, you should open a tab that says volume status.
Don't know. I don't know. What's okay? We can look at it after the thing.
Anyway, and then it basically prints a HTML table version of ZFS or zpool status. And you'll see the disk, and one of them will have a really long name and say it's offline. And if you click it, then there's a replace button at the bottom, and you select the member disk, which will be the new one that you've plugged in. It'll be the only option, I think. And then you hit replace disk, and magic happens. Okay,
I'll give that a shot tonight. I'll go through it. We'll find.
But yeah, I included the link to the PDF file, and the picture is on page 135.
I'll take a look. Thank you, Alan. All right, well, that wraps up the TechSNAP feedback. So you know what that means? It's time for the TechSNAP Roundup. Welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are stories that just didn't quite fit at the top of the show, but we still want to talk about them, give you some links to follow up on your own. And a lot of these links came from our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. Alan, our first story in the Roundup this week comes from one of our favorite sources, Mr. Krebs on security, and he talks a little bit about this Black Shades Trojan that you and I have been talking about off-air during the segment break. And he talks a little bit about how the Black Shades Trojan had it coming. He says early on in development, it is actually being monitored by researchers at Citizens Lab that discovered the Black Shades was being used to spy on activists seeking to overthrow the regime in Syria. The product was sold via well-traveled and fairly well-known open hacker forums, and even included an active user forum where customers could get help configuring and using the powerful surveillance tool. Although in recent years, a license to Blackshade sold for several hundred euros, early versions of the product were sold via PayPal for just $40. This would let you control machines, execute codes, turn on the web camera, stuff like that.
Yeah. So 97 people were arrested for using the malware against people, including 17 people related to apparently capturing nude pictures of Miss Teen America.
That's what they say.
Last year.
I'm skeptical of that particular part of the story, but
yeah, So what Krebs is saying is they were too obvious when they were selling it, and so the researchers have been watching it and who was buying it and stuff for so long that it is pretty bad.
I'm surprised
if you thought you were going to get away with it, you were pretty naive.
Well, and the funny thing is, even after all of this, last night on Unfiltered, we downloaded it. We went out, got it, and downloaded it during the show. It's still out there. It's still available. But both CNN and NBC News ran big pieces on this. And, the major piece of advice they passed along, which I actually wholly agree with, is don't open attachments in all of these cases.
Don't accept random file transfers over Skype. If you're not expecting the file and it's not from someone you know, then
even if you're Miss Teen USA, especially if you're Miss Teen USA, actually.
Especially if the person on the other end claims to be Miss Teen USA.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Nudies.jpeg.exe.
Yeah.
Remember that when that was a thing when people...
The Anna Kournikova
were still smart enough to know file extensions. Like now most people don't even know what they are. But people knew, but Windows hid them. So if you had .jpeg.exe, it hid the exe and made it make you think it's a JPEG.
The big ones that jump at me were the Britney Spears ones and the Anna Kournikova ones, where people would just open those up without thinking for some reason, and then guess what happens?
Ooh, why would someone? Who is this person, and why are they sending this to me? I don't know. I just want that.
Well, you know what? Despite what people might think.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Remember when Google did the study, and the worst thing you could possibly search for was free screensaver?
Yes. Yeah, it's or the other thing that gets end users a lot is like free games, free solitaire, stuff like that. You and I, despite what people might think, are big fans of the sysinternal tools. So what's the story about malware hunting with those tools?
So Mark Rusinovich, who's the author that wrote most of the sysinternal stuff and eventually got hired by Microsoft, he basically wrote all the tools that, especially from the command line, let you do stuff in Windows. They're really great. They kind of give you that little bit of a Unixy feel on Windows. But he just had two videos put up from the Tech Ed events at
Tech Ed. Here's a little bit of it. Here, I'm playing one of them right now. I'm actually playing two of them. But yeah, there's a couple of them here. So the audio is not awesome on them, but there's tons of good info in them. And that's kind of what's key.
Yeah. So the one's just about hunting malware using his tools, and the other one is about troubleshooting a system and specifically sluggish performance with his tools.
Oh, cool.
If, like probably half of our audience, you are responsible for admitting one or more Microsoft servers, you should take a look at that.
Yeah.
Also, Miss Teen USA has just joined the chat room from France.
Oh, good. Hello, Miss Teen USA. I'm glad you're able to join us over at jblive.tv on this Thursday afternoon. Awesome. All right. So that's if you're in a Microsoft shop, if you're a user of the sysinternal tools, go check out that link in the roundup. We're doing a solid for you Windows guys. All right. While we're talking about Microsoft, there's another Internet Explorer 0 day that surfaced. We talked about. I'm not sure if it's the same one we talked about because this one I think is something newer that came out this week. HP was one of the companies.
One's not patched yet.
Yeah, HP was one of the companies that helped find this. The website.
HP runs the 0 Day Initiative, which is a site specifically designed to help capture this stuff and disseminate it properly. And so their 0 Day Initiative is who the people did this through, so they would get their bug bounty.
Yeah, which is cool. So here we go, another 0 day, and this is just after the ones we talked about that came out recently. It's kind of, they're not going to. This is another one where Microsoft said that we won't be patching XP.
Yep.
So there you go. How many times do we have to say stop using IE?
Yep.
Like a lot, I guess. Our next roundup link is a PDF. What do we have here, Alan? A practical guide to correctly troubleshooting with traceroute. Oh.
Yes, this is a presentation that was presented at NANOG, the North American Network Operators Group. And it kind of explains, most people will maybe use a traceroute to try to tell where there's packet loss or something. But a lot of people misread that and don't quite understand what it means. And this kind of steps through what kind of stuff you can tell and what kind of stuff you can't tell from a traceroute. and basically teaches you how to read them properly, and also, explains why sometimes reverse ones are different, or why sometimes when a certain hop will have like 3 or 4 different routers on it, and explain why you might see that more with certain traceroute tools rather than other traceroute tools. Because if you're doing an ICMP traceroute, you're always going to fall in the same hash. But if you use a TCP traceroute, then each different port number is going to go through a different, the hash is going to put it in a different bucket. And so it might end up actually going through a different interface or a different router.
This is really a great presentation. Or whatever, a report or whatever. This is great. Yeah,
just a slides or something. Yeah. And so, it's quite technically detailed, but enough that most of our audience would probably be able to understand it and enjoy reading it.
There's some good diagrams in here, too, that kind of make it really sensible.
And it kind of talks about, how almost every connection on the internet is asymmetric. So when you're looking at a traceroute, you're only actually seeing the path from you to the remote side. And looking at the path from the remote side back to you, if you have that ability, provides a lot of insight.
Yes, very much so. All right, next...
And basically how there's actually no way there's no tool that can actually do both.
Yeah.
Because of the way it works.
Yeah.
If we made a slight change to the way TTLs worked, we maybe could do that, but that wasn't in the spec in the 70s, and so no one thought of it in the 70s, so we can't have it today without breaking the internet.
Sorry, everybody. All right, well, nothing says party like a CVE, and here we go. For Microsoft Word, we've got ourselves a little bit of a vulnerability.
Certain rich text file processing could allow it to execute arbitrary code. And this has been exploited in the wild as early as March 2012 or 2014.
14. Okay. All right, good.
Sorry. And the main reason I put this in is because the thing I had in the roundup, the next link.
The Twitter link?
This is a tool someone made to take any executable file and turn it into a Microsoft Word doc that exploits this exploit.
Look at this. How easy is this?
Yeah, so you just give it an exe file, tell it the name of the Word doc you want, and it gives you a .doc that you can send to someone as an attachment. And when they open it, it'll run the exe instead.
Jeez. There we go. It's right there on Twitter.
Boom, chakalaka. You've got their stuff. So don't open attachments.
Stop it, you guys. Don't open Word docs either.
Yeah.
All right, Alan. Next story on the roundup. Emory University server accidentally sends the reformat command to all Windows PCs and itself. This is so deployment on the network gone wrong. Here's what happened. A Windows 7 deployment image was accidentally sent to all Windows machines, including laptops, desktops, and servers. This image started with a repartition reformat set of tasks. As soon as the accident was discovered, the SCCM server was powered off. However, by that time, the SCCM server itself had been repartitioned and reformatted.
Well, how did it reformat itself?
Well, it kicks them off to all machines in the domain, I'm sure, and because it's local...
Right, but it would be the DHCP server, so when it rebooted, it wouldn't have a DHCP server to get.
It must write something to the boot record and changes the bootloader. Maybe it changes the bootloader and says, load this, and then when it loads that, it's an automated...
Most of these, what it would do is you'd end up pixie booting something, and so it would only affect somebody when they were booting up, and then...
Depends on the imaging. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to know what they did, but
gosh, that's embarrassing.
Especially when you reformat students' PCs or their laptops. I was like, I was just on the Wi-Fi, and you reformatted my freaking laptop.
Yeah. All right. Next story. When I hear about a network aircraft or an aircraft carrier's network getting hacked, I don't usually think of the sailor.
In this particular case, it wasn't the aircraft carrier that got hacked.
No, it wasn't.
The sailor hacked 30 different public and private organizations, including the U.S. Navy, the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, AT&T, and Harvard University.
Yeah.
But he did so from on board an aircraft carrier.
Yeah, I love
over what I guess was like a satellite link or something.
I'm sure that was clandestine operation, not related to any orders.
So the interesting thing here is just that they've arrested the guy, but
27 years old.
Yeah.
Daniel Trenton Kruger, Daniel Trenton Kruger, and Nicholas Paul Knight. So there's a couple of guys they got.
Yeah, only one of them was in the Navy, I think.
Okay.
But, they did this from on board the ship, making them harder to track, I suppose.
That's Man, could you imagine when they're doing like the investigation, tracking that attack back, and like, holy crap, do you know where this IP is from? I can only imagine.
Some satellite downlink, but where's the other end?
Yeah,
on a boat.
Yeah, it's on a boat out in the ocean, and it's a U.S. Navy boat.
Yeah, it's a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier.
You know it's a rockin' roundup when we've got not one but two Brian Krebs on security stories. This next one, I don't think it's going to be news for anybody that's watching the TechSNAP program, but if you're trying to convince maybe the shop you work at or friends and family to ditch Shockwave, boy, if this isn't going to convince them, nothing will. Check this out. We all know why we shouldn't be running Shockwave. That's obvious. But Will Dorman, a computer security expert who writes threat advisories for CERT, in a recent post on the release of the latest bundle of security updates that Alan talked about for Adobe, he mentioned the fact that Shockwave actually provides its own version of the Flash runtime embedded in Shockwave, and it is many releases behind. In fact,
it doesn't have any security fixes that have been released after January of 2013.
As 20 separate security releases it is missing, including several dangerous zero-day vulnerabilities that are still in that bundled version of Flash that comes with Shockwave Player. So get Shockwave off your computer.
Sense.
No, and maybe because it can't be accessed or triggered in the same way, Adobe said maybe feels like it's not as vulnerable, but that seems like crap. When you've got that software on the local box.
Known vulnerable versions of Flash.
Stupid. Yep. All right, we got a video from Vimeo in the roundup. Monitorama PDX 2014. What's this, Alan?
Yeah, so Monitorama is a conference run by a bunch of BSD people, but it was mostly about monitoring, right? It's like, how do you monitor your network properly? And the speaker in this particular one is James Mickens. You remember the Masada upon guy, the Microsoft researcher?
Yeah.
We had a bunch of funny articles from him the other week.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
This is one of his. This is him giving a live presentation. He's even funnier in person.
Let's listen in.
Just various permutations of the word computer and some action verbs. So much like Stonehenge, my wisdom is sophisticated cultural artifact that is timeless and will later be vandalized by drunken British youths. I encourage you to just sit back and accept my words uncritically. Just let them wash over you like waves of sweet knowledge. Look at that, it's a word cloud. But I'm a serious thinker that
that's pretty good. That actually looks like a great video. He's already got me laughing, and it's only the first 45 seconds.
Exactly.
Look at this pretty word column.
Word cloud, yeah.
Yeah, I'm in. Yeah, word cloud. Yeah, I'm in. All right, good. We'll have a link to that if you guys want to watch that entire video. Monitorama PDX 2014. This next...
sorry you missed the conference, but you can watch the videos.
This next... it's not a slide. It's just sort of... What do you call these kind of charts?
Infographic.
Okay, it's an infographic. There you go. I'll go with that. It shows how the media has been concentrated into these big companies, Viacom, AOL, Time Warner, News Corp, Clear Channel, and Disney, and pretty much that's it. Those are the main... Every other media outlet, TV station, radio station, owned by these guys. These... 5 companies. Pretty nuts. Including print, too.
Yeah. It's the same in Canada. Between Bell, Rogers, and Shaw, they own pretty much every newspaper, TV station, radio station, and satellite channel, and most of the internet service.
Look at magazines, newspapers, even everything down to the Golf Channel. I mean, everything is owned by these guys. So, and now they're also, of course, the internet as well, and they're merging even more, right? I mean, jeez. So, link in the show notes if you guys want to check out that if you're on the audio version. This is really, just looking at this just kind of gives me pause. This seems like a bad precedent to me. This seems like something that...
It's a little late now, but yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen there's an interesting one about AT&T separately, where it just shows AT&T is the monopoly getting broken up into like the 50 separate companies, and then merge.
Like the Terminator 2000.
Yeah, it just puts itself back together like a replicator.
All right. So our next story in the roundup: researchers quantify fake certificates using SSL connections. What?
Yes. Researchers at Carnegie Mellon University and Facebook have built a tool to actually detect when fake SSL certificates are being used.
Great.
In their case, they monitored 3.5 million SSL connections made to Facebook during the 4-month period starting December of 2013, so December through the end of March. And they found that 6,844 of the users were connecting to Facebook and accepting a certificate that wasn't actually valid. Most likely, the user's machine told them it was valid when it wasn't. So that's 0.2%, which doesn't seem very high, but that's still a lot of people that are being spied upon. Now, part of that could be, corporate things that purposely do man in the middle to monitor the content and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually do that with tools made. RelayD does that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested in setting up something like that so you can monitor traffic to Facebook from your office you work at or whatever.
Behind your corporate firewall or whatever.
Yeah. bsd.plumbing is the new domain for the tool.
Oh, cool. That's a great bsd.plumbing? That's a great domain name.
Yes, because it basically lets you do plumbing and stuff.
Yeah.
But the web page is literally just a man page for the thing. It's just somebody set up as a joke.
It's good. It's a good domain name nonetheless. Okay.
But yeah, it's interesting to see them actually being able to measure this. I'm sure Google, if they set this up on Gmail, would see even higher numbers because we suspect quite a few governments of purposely intercepting people's traffic.
Big time.
And then I imagine most of the people that get caught in this instance were just corporate firewalls that do things like this.
Yeah.
You can use your Windows Active Directory domain to make machines accept a certificate as valid, and you basically make your own root CA, and then you can sign the fake certificates.
Are you ready for our weekly reminder to get LastPass or KeyPass or something like that? Because eBay is here to provide it for you because they're asking users to change their passwords.
Yes, apparently eBay was compromised and encrypted passwords were stolen.
Yeah, same with bit.ly. By the way, I got an email from them that bit.ly accounts are compromised and they've disabled API access and that kind of stuff until you reset passwords.
Fun time.
So everybody, this is your weekly TechSNAP reminder.
Broke lots and lots of people's apps, external apps that use bit.ly.
Oh, for sure. All right, well, we got a tweet in the roundup from Dan Gooden. He says, you know how people say literally when they really mean figuratively? That's how most breach sites are with hashed and encrypted.
So they say encrypted when they actually mean hashed.
Yeah.
Because if they mean encrypted, it means they're Adobe and they're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And we can just decrypt them, and that's bad. So we're unsure what eBay meant. Did they actually mean encrypted, or did they mean hashed?
Right. Yeah, that's annoying.
Part of the problem is that, your regular layman doesn't know what hashed means and would be upset if their password wasn't encrypted. But people that do know what they're talking about would say, hey, you encrypted my password? What the hell's up with that? Why are you doing it wrong?
Yeah.
You're eBay. You should know better.
Been around
Don't
long
you
enough.
own PayPal, you bastards?
Yeah. Now we got a little BSD can shenanigans to get to. Do I have a big directory of slides here? Is that what's in the roundup? This is awesome.
It's an open source slide tool. It's pretty.
This is really cool. It's like a gallery preview of all the different slides.
I think you can click on them and
you can, and then you get the whole thing. Yep, I like this a lot. So this is any one particular one that jumped out at you that you want to send people to look at?
I don't know. There's one with like My Little Pony on it or something.
Yeah, I see that one. Yeah,
but there's a video at the bottom. So the talk was actually a surprise talk at BSDCan because of the airplane shenanigans. Chris Moore couldn't actually make it to BSDCan.
Oh, bummer!
After his first two flights from his home were canceled, and he finally managed to get to like Washington D.C. and they kept canceling his flight to actually get to Canada, and so eventually he gave up and went home.
Oh, geez, that's too bad.
He didn't want to sleep in the airport for 2 days waiting for a standby flight.
That's understandable.
Because they're like, we can guarantee we will get you there on Saturday when the conference ends.
No, thanks.
He was supposed to get there on Tuesday.
That poor guy.
Yeah, poor guy. He missed out, and I felt bad kind of rubbing it in with talking about how amazing it was. But he wanted to hear what would happen, too, at the same time, so it was okay. But anyway, because he had a talk, so there was a slot open all of a sudden. And Bob Beck, who is from the OpenBSD project, but is also in the programming committee that decides what talks there will be at BSDCan. Of course, this was all decided before Heartbleed anyway. But when the slot opened up, they jumped on it, and they had a 1 hour talk about Libre SSL, and specifically what they've managed to accomplish in the first 30 days and what their plans are going forward. And they have a lot of coverage on the gotchas of people making ports of it. You've seen quite a few ports of it pop up on GitHub.
Yeah.
And they've been done very, very incorrectly. So they work, but they don't do what they think they do.
That helps make it a more secure platform, even when it is stuff that we actually haven't written or audited and things like that. However, their malloc replacement library really was the final straw for us. Okay. Ted figured it out and posted it. Ted Unext is up on the front here. Ted works on this as well. Probably has shredded more code out of it than I have. their malware never frees memory. Essentially, they decided malloc is slow on some platforms, so let's assume malloc is slow everywhere. And let's implement our own cache that never frees anything and just reuses the objects. Better yet, the way that it reuses objects is it keeps a last in, first out queue. So if you actually are using a use after free, chances are excellent that that object is still there. Matter of fact, it's almost certain that if you free something and use it immediately, that thing is still there, and it doesn't matter that you freed it.
So this looks like a great talk.
It is.
Yeah.
There was literally standing room. I got there like early, and I had to stand at the back. There was nowhere left to sit.
Did they use Comic Sans for the entire presentation? Is that a thing?
You have the slides.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
One of the slides at the beginning talks about weaponizing Comic Sans.
That is exactly what they're doing.
Bob Beck is from Edmonton in Canada.
Yeah, this looks like it's a hour and 5 minute presentation.
Yeah, it kind of went overtime. The talks are supposed to be 50 minutes.
Well, I mean that's
and thanks to Tubstuff for recording that. Although BSD Can, the website will actually have a better recording with lapel mic audio, and they captured his laptop output rather than his face.
Oh, great!
But Tubstuff's video got us access to it right away.
I mean, it's the content. You still get the content, and to have the insight from folks who are actually ripping code out of it and building LibreSSL. I mean, that's huge.
And if you're interested, we interviewed Ted Unangst it was before Heartbleed, about a tool he built for OpenBSD called Signify, which is how they sign all their binary packages.
Yeah.
But if you want to see an interview with him, we have that as a couple episodes ago on BSD Now.
There you go. And, of course, this week's BSD Now is out right now over on the Jupiter Broadcasting website. You can go over there and catch that. Also, I'll point you over to yesterday's Unfilter, episode 98 of Unfilter. We talked about the indictment against Chinese cyber hackers. Alan, you remember that group that Mandiant pointed out like a couple of years ago? Well,
yeah,
we've actually filed charges against specific individuals over there.
The 5 officers in charge of it.
Yeah, and we talk about the companies they went after, what the big shenanigans about, and sort of the bigger impacts of all of this in episode 98 of Unfilter. So a couple episodes you guys can go check out.
I'm sure you guys will talk about this next week, but China's already demanding that they drop the charges.
Yeah, they're pissed. They're pissed. Which, I mean, the recent Snowden revelations have sort of left the U.S. in the hypocrisy category when it comes to this kind of stuff. But anyway, so a couple of great episodes of both BSD Now and Unfilter out this week that is relevant to your interest, dear TechSNAP viewers, so we invite you to go check those out. And don't forget, we'd love to get your feedback. So email us, techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com, or actually what I'd even prefer is start a thread in our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv, or email us, go to contact over on the Jupiter Broadcasting website. We got a link at the top of the site. Choose TechSNAP from the drop-down, and then the robots will make sure it gets sent to the right destination, and then you don't have to worry about it. All right, Alan, is there anything else we want to cover before we go today?
Nope.
Okay, very good. Well, we'd love to have you join us live. Show up over at jblive.tv on a Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific, which is
4 p.m. Eastern, 2100 UTC.
Boom, over at jblive.tv for the video version.
Sorry, 2000 UTC.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. Or jblive.info for the audio-only stream, and jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar will convert that to your local time zone. And last but not least, don't forget you can subscribe to TechSNAP's various RSS feeds in whichever format you'd prefer, and then you just get the systems network and administration goodness when we release it. You don't have to worry about it. It just is magic almost. Very good. All right, Alan, well, you have a great week. Welcome back. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
And a big thank you, everyone, for tuning in this week's episode of TechSNAP. We'll see you right back here next week.